Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Annette Greenwood, one of the funding officers of the National Lottery Community Fund. I can see the first slides come up now. What I'm going to not do, or try not to do, is a bit of death by PowerPoint. So I know it cracks everybody up, so I shall go through it as quickly as I can. I've got myself a 30-minute timer so I don't go over. If I'm going too fast, Hilary, stop me. But otherwise, I'll do my best to go through it as quickly as I can. So, can we have the next slide already then, please? Right, thank you. So, I think there's some notes missing off the bottom, but it doesn't matter, Hilary, don't worry. So, the National Lottery Community Fund, some people know a lot about it, some people don't know anything about it. So I'm going to pretty much ad hoc read off the screen today. I have got some notes, but they haven't appeared. So the National Lottery players contribute around 30 million to good causes every week, which is a phenomenal amount of money. We also distribute about 600 million a year to communities across the UK. Some of the charities or people here today might have already had funding from us. In the Yorkshire and Humber region, we award around £26 million per year and are currently supporting almost 800 organisations across all our funding programmes, again, which is a massive amount of people and money. Next slide, please. So, our purpose, we support people and communities to thrive. Our goals are we support ideas and activities that matter to people and communities, and that can be a varied amount of things depending on your organisation and the projects that you have. We use our funding and relationships to help create stronger, more connected communities, and we support charities and community organisations across the UK to be vibrant, diverse and active. I like the sound of that. The vibrant, diverse and active is one of the things I'm a big fan of. The next slide, please. Our approach is very flexible, it's open to all. And in this morning's panel, I think it was here, we had questions about mental health and the difficulties people are facing, gaining funding. And I've said, we are an open funder. So it doesn't really matter about the mental health. It's, you come to us and we can talk to you about it because we have a conversational approach and we are very proportionate. The next slide, please. Right, our funding priorities. So this is really important for anybody who's considering applying for funding to reaching communities. Strong relationships. So we support ideas that bring people together, strengthen relationships in and across communities. We also support projects that are shared and sustainable places. So we support people to shape and sustain the places that matter to them, like parks, community centres, or online networks. And that can be, again, anything from, as we say, a community centre where you are having regular activities, or online networks, which are obviously quite popular at the moment, given the situation that we're in. We also support organisations that prevent early action problems and tackle disadvantages. So we support activities that empower people to fulfil their potential, working to address problems at the earliest possible stage. Again, that might be about mental health, it might be something else completely. It's very personal to every organisation what kind of projects and what you're seeking funding for. Again, always back to the conversational approach and having discussions with your local funding officer is probably one of the best things that you can do. Next slide, please. Our priorities in response to the pandemic. So we're going to, during the pandemic, we had a 6-month emergency responding funding. That has now finished and we're back to the reaching communities as it is, but we're still going to support people and communities that are adversely impacted by COVID-19 because that hasn't finished and it's probably likely to continue for some time. We want to do more than support organisations to survive. We want to support communities to thrive and grow. If there's anything that, Paul, you want to add as I'm going through this, you just chip in, won't you, in case I'm missing anything at all. So that's kind of really the ethos and what we want to do at the moment. We are aware that the pandemic isn't over. and that for some organisations it's a very worrying time, but we are here and we're here to support as best we can. Next slide, please. Who can apply? So this is always one that everybody wants to know. You can apply if your organisation is a voluntary or community organisation, a registered charity, a constituted group or club, a non-for-profit company or community interest company. We cannot accept applications from individuals or sole traders, companies that can pay profits to directors, shareholders or members, organisations based outside the UK, and organisations that don't have at least 2 trustees who aren't married, in a civil partnership, long-term relationship, living at the same address or related by blood, or one organisation applying on behalf of another. And if you're not quite sure, even after reading through this and when you go online, if you just contact us and we can sort of clarify any concerns or issues that you may have. Next slide, please. So what we're looking for in organisations we support. So we want to support organisations that are people-led. So ensuring the work you do is meaningfully involved in the development, design and delivery of your work with your community, so that it's your community that have the voice. And it's not about being top down, it's very much about people being in the lead, exactly what it says. And again, if you need clarification when you are applying to us, just give us a call and we can talk it through with you. We very much want to support strengths-based approach. So that's supporting people and communities to build on the knowledge, skills and experience they already have to make the changes they want. So it might be you've already got people in your organisation or your charity that you can work with to develop in your project going forward. Sorry, that's just covered my slide up, the question there. I'm just going to have to, there we go. Connected, so we want you to demonstrate a good understanding of other activities and services in the community and showing how your proposal will complement these. So it might be that your project is about mental health and there might be 4 other organisations in your area delivering mental health projects as well. So we'd like to know that you've maybe had a discussion with them. So working together or discussing, maybe one of you is going to do projects in the community which are art-based, arts and crafts. The other one might be doing something that's more educational based, but it's about that connecting and understanding what's going on as a bigger picture in your community. The next slide, please. Our funding officer, that's me, sorry, our funding officer. So have a look at our website, the National Lottery Awards for All, Reaching Community and Partnerships. It says here that all applications should go through the website unless you have specific communication requirements, but not necessarily that's the case. We very often get phone calls from like Community First Yorkshire. We'll have discussions with them. You can come to me as your local funding officer for Scarborough, Rydale and Richmond, and you can have a conversation with me before you even actually go onto the website. And if it turns out that we aren't the right funder for you, it might be that you want to go somewhere else, or you just want to clarify a few points. So the website is brilliant and use that by all means, but we are here for a conversational approach as well. And as it says at the bottom, all our programs can be found on our website, and there's a link there. Next slide, please. Right, so the National Lottery Awards for All. So I'm a Reaching Communities funding officer, but I do have some information about the Awards for All side of it, and you can go to them directly, but here it gives you the information that you might need to help you decide which programme you want to go for. So Awards for All grants are from £300 up to £10,000 for 1 year. It's for funding new activities and testing new ideas, which is brilliant if you've got an idea and you want to see where it will go. You can apply at any time, but you can only have 1 award in 12 months, so that's quite important. Applications are online using a response to one question, and decisions typically within 12 weeks. I don't know whether that's changed because of the pandemic or whether we're still back at that, Paul. Do you know? Is that a nod or are we still on 12 weeks with that?
Yeah, it is taking a little bit longer, actually, Annette. It's probably taking up to about 15, 16 weeks currently. But because we are actually experiencing, you know, an unprecedented amount of applications in the light of the aftermath of COVID. So, yeah, so it may take a little longer than that. But they do still process applications very, very quickly. It's one of our quickest routes to getting funding.
Okay, thank you, Paul. The next slide, please. Right, reaching communities and partnerships. So we can fund individual organisation or partnerships, and grants are from 10,000 or more, running for up to 5 years. You can apply at any time. Applications are online with other formats available if you need it, but you can just contact us if necessary and we can support you with that. What we will fund are direct costs and project related costs, organisational development, core and fixed costs and capital costs. I think as an organisation, it's important to know that when you come into reaching communities, that all these kind of costs will be considered. And again, having the conversational approach at an early stage is really useful, and it gives you a clear idea about your budgets and things like that, which obviously very fundamentally important. But yeah, I think it's quite refreshing. Next slide, please. Partnerships, right. So ideas that inspire joint action that go beyond what any single organisation can achieve alone. So I was thinking about this morning about collaboration and how some people feel that it's competition, but actually at the fund, collaboration is a really fundamental thing, because two organisations can sometimes be stronger together than what you can achieve alone. And one of the questions I think I heard somebody say was about, do we encourage partnership approach? And yes, we do. Partnership or standalone, it's whatever again works for you and your community. Ideas that address long-term issues in a place or on a theme. And our key focus is on helping people and organisations to share values and use their networks and strengths in new ways. So generous leadership. I don't know if Paul wants to say anything else about generous leadership, do you, or no? Yeah, I'm getting a yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I keep missing the
That's
mute
all
one.
right.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, partnerships is something that we're trying to encourage in terms of collaboration. So collaboration between organisations, whether that's a couple of organisations or basically an alliance of organisations coming in. It's something that we are constantly reviewing, our partnerships programme. And as Annette has said quite rightly, one of the things that we look for within an organisation is generous leadership. And the best way of explaining that is that generous leadership is that it's organisations that share similar values, and they can share those values and share their learning and experience with others. Okay, so that's what the partnerships specifically focus on. And these partnerships are meant to be long-lasting partnerships. They're not meant to just come together for a period of time while the funding's available. You need to be able to demonstrate sustainability and resilience in terms of a partnership going forward. Potentially, there are two types of partnerships that we might fund. There's a partnership where it's what we call a pyramid effect, where you've got one organisation who acts as the lead, okay? And then they have partnership agreements with other organisations, okay? Or we can fund an alliance of organisations that come together. That's less preferred by us because normally they're governed by a memorandum of understanding. And as most of you will be aware, a memorandum of understanding, quite difficult to say, doesn't actually have a legal bearing as such, so it makes it quite difficult. So that means that we have to have a relationship with each partner rather than one. So the preferred option is the pyramid structure, but we can also fund alliances in terms of partnerships. Okay, I'll let you continue, Annette.
Thank you, Paul. I knew you were there for a reason. So next slide, please. Right, top tips. Plan and consult as widely as possible. So with your organisation and your community, and find out as much as you need to be able to sort of come to reaching communities with your application. Understand budget and financial position. In a way, I suppose that goes without saying, but it is one of the key things. Budgets can often be a bit of a bone of contention for everybody. And what I would say is, don't undervalue your project. Don't try to skim it to the bone so that you're just getting through it. It really needs to be where you're funding everything that you need, not in an overway either, so not that extreme, but just keeping in the balance there about what you need. Have your clear aims and objectives and your measurable outcomes. I think we had a discussion about that this morning, didn't we, Hilary? And I don't think you've maybe heard that, but that was about, measuring outcomes and what do we expect and that kind of thing. And one of the things I first learned when I came to the fund was about, and Paul said this to me, if you think about your projects and your outcomes in terms of what does your project do for Mrs. Smith who lives at 44 Acacia Drive, what does it do for her? And then it helps you to understand better about where it's going and what you want it to do and what the people who are on the project want it to do. Read our website, because that does have a lot of information on there, and it sort of repeats what we say really, but I think it's nice to have it where we can have it spoken to like this. Speak to a funding officer and be honest, and that is a real key top tip, that one. We are here to support, we are here to talk to. Be honest. If you think that, if you're not sure about something, just tell us, because sometimes often talking it through, we can't shape your project, but it helps you to get a clearer understanding of what your needs and what your wants are and where you'd like to see things go. So please do be honest about, where you are with things. Understand fully the people in the lead and connected and strengths-based. I think people in the lead is one of the things that most organisations I've spoken with struggle with about what is people in the lead. So it's about having meaningful discussions with the people who are on your project, help letting them shape it rather than it be a top-down project. So, trustees might think this is a fabulous idea and this is what we're going to do, but have you consulted with your community? Is it what you want? Is it what your community wants? So there's quite a lot to think about really. And being connected to other organisations, are you going to be duplicating something they're doing? Or do you work together? So, for example, you might be running a project for isolated people, and you might be connected to a community transport organisation. So you've got those kind of important connections going on there. And strength-based, the people on your projects, are you utilising them and their skills and helping them to progress? So the whole of the project is shaped by them and not by you. I mean, those are the kind of top tips we've got here. If there's any other that you know of, Paul, give me a nod again. Otherwise, I'll go on. Is that a yes? Yeah.
And there's a couple of things that don't, I mean, Annette's quite right. The things that we assess against, particularly in reaching communities and partnerships, is we assess against people in the lead. We assess against the connectivity of organisations and strengths-based. But there's a couple of unseen, and they're kind of embedded in the website, really. So when you're reading the guidance, there are a couple of other areas that we actually consider when we're carrying out an assessment. And the first one is impact. So the impact of your project and what that's going to have within the community in which you serve. In other words, how that's going to help your community to thrive. So it's about the impact. And then secondly, about local context. Now that's really key and really important at the moment. It's about knowing what else is being funded in your area, whether it's by us or by other organisations. It's about understanding the sector and any complementary activities that you might offer to other organisations, or if there's any duplication. And just because there's duplication, that doesn't necessarily mean that we won't fund it. It may be that the need is greater than the availability of the services that you provide. So I think those are just a couple of extras, right, really, to add on to that. So if you think on in terms of 5 key priorities that we assess against: people in the lead, connected, strengths-based, impact, local context. Okay, there you go. You can move on now, Annette.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Right, how to apply to reaching communities and partnerships. So your proposal for funding form so it gives you quite a few tips on here. I'm just moving that. It'll give you a few tips on here about what kind of things that we'll ask for on the form. So the name of your project and where it will take place. That's quite an obvious one in your community, or where it is going to take place. What you'd like to do, and how has demand for your service changed now through COVID-19? I think without exception, most people's projects have changed in some way, and they've had to diversify into doing online, training people how to do Zoom and all those kind of things. So you need to put in there, not massively, but succinctly, how has demand for your service changed? How your work will involve your community. Again, that's back to the people in the lead and that fundamental thing about it being community driven. How your project fits with local activities. So what else, there's what Paul's just mentioned actually, what else is going on in your area, have a bit of a recce about, see if it's something that you connect with other people on, with other organisations on. Who will benefit from your project? So the people that are involved, again, really important at the moment, how they've been affected by COVID-19. So we've seen some communities that are in really isolated places over here in North Yorkshire, where there's been so many things happening where people have not had families, they've not been speaking to people, they've been stuck at home, not been able to get out. People's health and well-being have been impacted, whether it be mental health or physical health. So really important to make it clear that who will benefit from your projects, what difference it will make, and how it will mitigate the impact of COVID-19, which I know is quite a difficult one, and that's quite a challenging thing to ask. But really, it's about, if you're delivering food, for example, to somebody who couldn't get out because of COVID-19, that's mitigating the impact. But there'll be varying ways depending on your project and how you run it. How much money you need and what you intend to spend the money on. Again, that's a really fundamental thing, and it goes back to the slide earlier about being honest about what you need. And I think it's probably fair to mention at this point, as Paul said earlier, we have had and still are having a very high volume of applications this year. Some of that's due to COVID, some of that's due to other reasons, but we are having to make difficult decisions as well. So as well as being honest within your application and what you need, it's about being realistic as well. So I think it's just fair to point that out now. How long you will need the money for. So you can apply up to 5 years. I think we're still doing it at 5 years, Paul. I haven't heard anything different. So at the moment, we haven't been funding as many projects for 5 years because we've been trying to distribute money to lots of different organisations. So rather than one organisation have 5 years, it's fair to say we'd like to see others maybe have 3. So it's sort of proportionate and distributed better. What your organisation does and why you're best placed to deliver the project. So it's about shining a light on you, really, about what your expertise is, what you do best. You know better than we do what you do best. So don't hide your light under a bushel. Say what it is you do best and why you're best placed to deliver your project. What skills and experience you've got, especially lived experience. That's really, really important. So, share that with us and give us an overall big picture of why you want the money, what you want it for, and what it's going to do. The next slide, please. Application process. Right, so initial funding proposal, and then a follow-up conversation. So you might have your idea and you might send that idea in and it goes to our website and it'll come to me as the local funding officer, I'll have a look at that application or the funding proposal, sorry, and then we'll have a follow-up conversation. So we'll make an appointment time, or I might just ring you and we'll have a discussion about it. I might spot things in it that I can see that it can strengthen, or I might spot something in it that's not there that I need to see. So that's all part of the conversational approach. Once I've done that, I'll then take it to the first available team meeting. At the team meeting, just to give you a bit of a flavour, there's a variety of funding officers who will look at the report that I've written. So they don't see your application, they see the report that I've written. And they will then, all decide on the funding side of it, on the impact it's got, all those kind of things. And then if you're invited through to full funding proposal, I'll then come back to you and tell you, your full funding proposal now, you'll get more information on what we require from you. And then also, I haven't been doing this at the moment, and I don't think we'll be in a rush to do this, but we can do things by Zoom and Teams and things. Conversations again, more conversations, and then a visit, which is the thing that's been missing over the last 18 months. But I think the projects that I've been working on, we've been having more conversations and longer conversations for me to understand better what your project is, what your needs are. And again, just to support it, supportive process really. Then after the conversation and visit and the second stage information, we then go to a panel meeting. At the panel meeting, that is really where you'll be told by the panel, it's a yes or a no, hopefully it's a yes, and then you'll be able to run your project for however many years you've requested funding. So yeah, that's pretty much the application process. Again, unless there's anything you think in there you want to add, Paul, is there about that? Yeah, there is.
I think just to try and simplify that application process for people. We are discouraged from saying it's a two-stage process. Now, what I'd just like to point out is that reaching communities and partnerships is a two-stage process, really. We are discouraged, as I said, from saying it. The first stage is called the ideas stage, and the second stage is called funding proposal stage, okay? So when you actually embark on an application for reaching communities or the partnerships program, then you need to give yourself at least a minimum of 6 months, because it's quite a lengthy process. As you can see, as Annette has said, it's very conversational. It's all about building up a relationship. It's all about building trust. So just that's something to note. The Awards for All, which is the smaller grants program up to £10,000 that Annette mentioned earlier, because that's a 12-month program. So you've got to have your money spent within 12 months. That's more of an online application. So it's a little bit more traditional in the way that it's done. You fill in an application form and you get a decision within 12 to 16 weeks. But just note that actually reaching communities is a much longer process, and it's all about building the relationship. And actually your project can change throughout that 6 months. It can develop, it can expand, it can contract accordingly. But you can use those two stages quite productively by getting lots of support from your local funding officer. Okay.
Thanks, Paul. I think it's fair again to say at the moment that the process has been taking longer because of COVID-19, because of varying other reasons that I won't go into, but it has been taking longer than normal. So it can get a little bit frustrating for customers. We understand that, but again, we've all been up against it. So hopefully the outcome will be positive at the end of all this. So, and the next slide, please. Safeguarding, yeah, that's an important one. If your proposal involves working with young children, young people, vulnerable adults, you'll need to have a policy in place that explains how they'll be safe. If you are working with children, the NSPCC have lots of helpful advice about setting up and following good child safeguarding policies. I'm sure Community First Yorkshire also would give you some advice if you need it. And if you do fund your organisation, if we do fund it, so you must comply with our safeguarding policy. And I think that's on the website. I'm not sure, is it, Paul? But you can get, yes, it is. You can get a copy of that. So the next slide, please. So the final slide, to find out more, visit our website. Excuse me, Core Advice Line, they're always very helpful and can give you some information, or email us. I'm not sure if Hillary's, will you be giving out these yeah, so be giving out those numbers. So yeah, so that's the last slide. So that just leaves me to say, well, if you to ask questions of Paul and I, that's not a problem. Look at that, down to the last 4 seconds.
Well done, you did that very well. Right, if we can come off the presentation, Stella, that'd be great. So if anybody has some questions, I'm just going to run through the questions that come up in the chat room. I don't know if everybody's followed those. Oh, everybody's disappeared. Okay, I'm having some technical difficulties myself. Oh, there we go. Just lost you all there. Somebody asked if town and parish councils can apply, and the answer was yes, you can. There are 5 criteria. I know Annette covered most of them, but we just pop them in the chat so that that's clear. And the chat will be sent to you after the event, so that you can, any links or anything that people put in there, you can have. So those 5 criteria will be in there. These aren't weighted, okay? So that was another one. I think there's some that have come in. Sorry, I just got to read them. Right, somebody has asked, we had a national lottery grant which has been really helpful, especially during COVID-19. Next summer it runs out. How does it look if we apply again? Is that okay, or is that looked at unfavourably?
Not looked at unfavourably at all. I think the thing to do is, if it's next summer when it's due to run out, if they come back, and I'm not sure if I'm their funding officer, but if they come back to me kind of 6 months before, we can have a conversation about it. I'm hoping things will have changed from where we are now with the high volume and the restrictions that we've had on us with budgets and things. So I would say just carry on with what you're doing. Just drop me an email, give us a call in another 6 months' time, and then we can have a chat there. So no, it's not looked upon unfavourably at all.
Okay, thank you. Another question in the chat box. We applied earlier this year for a community grant, and the response said that the application wasn't going to be taken any further because of our level of annual organisational income. Does this mean we would never be successful with a future application unless our income reduces?
I don't know the particular scenario with that, Hillary, so I can't sort of comment on that, but I wouldn't have thought, I mean, Paul probably might be better placed to answer that than me, but I'm not sure what's happened with that, so I really don't feel that I can comment.
Yeah, I can come in on that one, actually, Annette. Can I just ask, it's from James, isn't it? Can I just ask, James, was it an Awards for All application that you applied for?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
What's happened is, at the moment, Awards for All, because they're grossly oversubscribed, what happens is that where larger organisations are applying for funding, they've set an income cap on all large organisations. That's only a temporary cap, can I just say? So what I would say is keep your eyes open on the website, because criteria does change from time to time. Okay, so, but because of the unprecedented amount of applications that we've been having, what has happened is Awards for All have said, well, actually, do you know what? So as that we're being fair and equitable to the smaller organisations, which is what really the Awards for All funding is designed for. It's designed to sort of pilot projects. It's for smaller organisations who've got less turnover, although equally it can be used to test ideas for some of the larger organisations as well. What they're trying to do is, so that they get more of an equitable spread, they put a little bit of a cap on the amount of income that you currently generate. I have to say, I'm not sure what that cap is, but it's probably around about, is it about $500,000 or something, or is it less than that? I don't know. But I'd have to speak to the Awards for All team on that, but because they work separately to us. but I am led to believe that they have put it's a temporary cap. So what I'd say is keep looking at the website. Things will change as they get rid of some of the volumes, and as we probably move into next year, they'll probably relax those rules and that criteria again.
Right, thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Another question here. I know capital works were mentioned earlier. If we have a capital works project, are award levels through reaching communities similar to revenue projects? That's
Right,
from
I can take this one as well if you want, Annette.
Yeah.
I mean, no. I mean, capital is the moment, because of our unprecedented volumes of applications, are taking lower priority because they're longer term projects. And although we appreciate that organisations need to, say, for example, if it's village hall, they need to develop their village hall, and they need to pre-plan for the future. And actually, they've learned a lot through COVID as well, through the pandemic. We accept that, but at the moment, what we're doing is we're being slightly more responsive in our funding in the organisations where there's a real immediate need. So where there are a big rises in sort of need, those are being focused on more. But we do look at local context. So sometimes, for example, if a village hall is really important to a small rural community and there's nothing else around, then we would look at the local context of that. So we look at every application on its own merit. But what I will say, and I'm being honest, is that capital projects at the moment are not one of our key priorities, but they are eligible. So that shouldn't discourage you from applying if you've got a project. But I would suggest you have a conversation with your local funding officer first, and then you'll get a feel as to whether it's the right time. Okay. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, she's nodding. Yeah, thanks, Adele. One from Charlotte here. How soon can you apply for reaching communities after Awards for All? And I'm just going to throw in another question on that. Can you apply for both at the same time?
Yeah. Do you want to take this one, Annette, or do you want me to take it again?
I can take you can apply for it pretty much straight away, or just a little bit before. You can't have them both running together for the same project. They've got so you can have two individual applications, but not for the same project. So if it ends in March or something, they can apply for it just before, because it'll have finished by then, won't it? The Awards for All. What was the second one again? Sorry.
Well, you've answered it. Can you?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, because it's a common question that comes up, so I just thought I'd throw in. Okay, there's another one from Abby. Is there an income threshold for the communities and partnerships?
No, in terms of the, I'm assuming that the communities are reaching communities. Yeah. There isn't currently. No. Large organisations can apply into our reaching communities and partnerships, as they've always been able to do. So some of the larger organisations, some of the big national organisations obviously bid into that. But one of the things I say is, if you are a national organisation or a federated organisation, sometimes it might be worth considering looking at some of our strategic programmes, which are multinational, so they go across the whole country. So where you might be thinking about applying maybe as a collective. So say, for example, you've got regional officers. Sometimes it might be worth looking at applying into the funding as maybe a consortium of regions. So say, for example, Yorkshire and the Humber and the North East, or maybe the North West, or even London and South East, come together and put a collaborative application in, and that could possibly be considered by our multinational team, which is, across the whole country, basically.
Okay, thanks very much. Anne-Louise has just posted a comment in here. I don't know, Anne-Louise, if you want to turn it into a question. Do you want to unmute and just make the point? I can't.
Sorry, had trouble with my mute button there.
Okay.
It was just a comment that I had a quick look on the website, and basically they don't give a threshold amount from that previous question about income.
For the Awards for All.
Yes.
Yeah, the Awards for All doesn't quantify the amount of income.
Yeah. the website's probably not caught up. What you'll find is that the website is regularly updated, so it's likely to have not caught up yet. But it will be on there. I know there are some talks, there's some conversation about what's on the website currently, because there's quite a lot of information on there about COVID-19 at the moment. And of course, we're moving away, although we still support, communities that's most adversely affected by COVID-19. We are moving away from that because we're not a responsive funder. Okay. We're much more planned, we're much more strategic, we're more of a strategic funder.
Okay. Keep your questions coming. I've just got another one here. What is your view on organisations that have decent reserves, i.e. more than 12 months running costs in the bank?
Yeah, I mean, I can take this one again, Annette. These are always the interesting questions that people ask. What we would say is that your reserves policy should be observed. So if an organisation's carrying more than what their reserves policy would say in their constitutional documents, then we would probably look at that. We would ask a lot of questions around that. We would be asking why you were asking for more money. So if you're saying that you need 6 months reserves, running costs, unrestricted reserves to keep the organisation running in the times of crisis, but yet you're carrying 18 months worth of reserve, we would naturally ask that question, because part of the funding proposal, which is the stage 2, we do a financial assessment on you, and you have to fill in some financial documents about your current financial standing. So it'll ask you things about what your income is, what your projected income you think is going to be. It will ask you about what's been reported at your last annual general meeting and what was in your audited accounts for the previous year. But it will also ask you for a projection of what you think your outturn is going to be for this financial year if your accounts are not completed. So it will ask you a series of questions. It's not quite as onerous as it seems, and your funding officer can help you with that. So those of you who've got small organisations, it's just taking a look at your accounts and reflecting that in a form, basically. Okay. But if you're carrying excessive amounts of reserve and that's not earmarked, then we would be asking that question. Doesn't necessarily mean that it will prohibit you from being funded, but what I am saying is we would want an explanation for that.
Great, thank you very much. Charlotte, do you want to unmute rather than hearing my voice all the time and ask your question?
Yes. Do you advise applying for 3 years of funding from Reaching as opposed to 5 years? Just going back to what Annette was saying during the presentation there.
I think.
Sorry, you saying that one, Paul. Sorry.
No, go on, Annette. You answer.
What I was going to say was, and you might say it differently. We don't discourage you from applying for 5 years, but at the moment we are funding more 3 than 5. That would be my answer at the moment.
And if I can add to that, it would be, I agree with Annette. We obviously 3 years as less investment from us, but if your project needs 5 years, yeah, we are not in a position to shape your project. So if you are telling us that your project needs 5 years funding for whatever reason, then we have to look at that. Quite rightly, Annette, as she's saying, 3 years, we seem to be getting more 3-year applications at the moment, but that doesn't stop you from applying for 5 years. Okay, we can't stop you. But again, a conversation with your funding officer to get a little bit of a flavour about what's happening in terms of local context. Because what you've got to remember is if you're an organisation that's providing services that's very often similarly provided, and I was in the previous session earlier this morning which covered the mental health, as you can appreciate, nearly every application that we get currently has some form of mental health support built into it currently. Now, obviously from a local context point of view, and I'll give you the hypothetical example. If you've got a city with homelessness, lots of homelessness, yeah, and we get 20 £500,000 applications, yeah, for homelessness in that city, and actually, which means that we would be investing 10 million in that city. Okay. However, the national statistics tell us that there's only 600 people living rough in that city. Is 10 million in terms of social return on investment, is 10 million a good amount to spend on 600 people who are displaced or homeless? Now, I'm not saying that the figures are not skewed, but what I am saying is what we would start to do is enter into a conversation with organisations that are providing all those similar activities and see whether there's any particular areas that they could actually work together, or whether there are areas of duplication. So, for example, one organisation might provide outreach, another one might actually provide overnight accommodation, emergency accommodation. So actually, they're clearly quite different. Okay, so we'd probably fund them. But actually, if they were all doing a bit of the same, and the need isn't that great, or the statistics are not telling us that it is, why would we invest 10 million into that into that sector? So local context is really, really important in everything that you do. It's really important that you consider what's going on around you and who else is doing similar work, and is there any collaboration, is there any connection there? What is it that you're actually, what's your unique selling point? Okay, and you might not have one. It might be just that you just deliver really good services to the community, and that's fine as well. Okay, that makes sense. Probably digressed a bit there, but yeah,
that's okay. Has anybody else got a burning question? Because we're going to run out of time fairly soon. If you want to unmute and ask it, I'll just give you a couple of seconds, otherwise I've got one here. Okay, I'm going to just ask then, can you tell us about the most common mistakes you see on an application form, or common reject reasons?
There's probably a few there, Paul, isn't there? One of them is about not answering the questions in the way it's been asked, and that's maybe because of not understanding, and that's fine. Not putting in there enough about people in the lead and about the actual priorities that we're asking for, not sort of looking at your project and saying, well, what does our project do? That's people in the lead, that kind of thing. Those are the two most ones I've seen anyway. I don't know about what you think, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think people in the lead is absolutely key. It's underpinning. Your project will only be funded if it's a strong project. Yeah. Okay. And when we talk about that, because it's a two-stage process, yeah, you'll probably, I always say to organizations, is if you put the work in at the beginning, then it should pay dividends further down the line. And basically, your aim is to get from stage 1 to stage 2, from the idea stage to a funding proposal stage. Now, you've got about a 1 in 5 chance at the moment. So it's 20% chance. And treat this statistic, as broadly, but it's a bit like the Pareto theory. 20% of applications get from stage 1 to stage 2, yeah, and then 80% of the applications get funded at stage 2. So actually, it's only 80% of 20%, if that makes sense. So there's another 20% that don't. So the caveat being is that if you get through stage 1 and you get through stage 2, there's no guarantee that you get funded at the end. However, you have a better chance if you put the work in at the beginning. People in the lead is one of the most common areas that we actually that organisations are unsuccessful, and that makes it a weaker project compared to others. And when we talk about people in the lead, what we want to understand from you is we want to see how people at a grassroots level have shaped, developed, designed, and ultimately are going to deliver the project. Okay. So again, if I use the village hall scenario, what we tend to find a lot of is a group of village hall trustees will come to us and say, we want a new roof, we want new electrics, we want new toilets, we want new heating. Okay, that's great. But what they don't tell us is how the people are going to use that village hall. What they fail to understand is the village hall is just the catalyst to bring people together. We accept that they need a new roof, they need heating, they need toilets and a kitchen, etc. But what we want to understand from them is how people are going to use that village hall. Now, I understand that because the trustees are custodians of the building, they want to preserve it. And so they think roof, they think heating, they think toilets, they think kitchen. But we don't. We think people first. So always put people in the lead. So make sure you come at it from the people perspective. And Nanette used my analogy. If you've got Mrs. Smith that lives on 44 Acacia Drive. Yeah, she's recently bereaved and she goes to the luncheon club at the local village hall. What is the impact on her life? Tell her story. Okay. And then you can justify the new roof, the toilets, and the heating system in the village hall, because what you're doing is you're justifying the reason for it being there. Okay. So always people in the lead. Yeah.
All right. There's one more question I'm going to squeeze in before we're out of time. So, Mags, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hello, yes, thank you very much for that. And it is linked in the people in the lead, because I think sometimes I've thought it's meant that the people that we help must tell us how to shape the service, and we deliver services to survivors of sexual violence who actually come to us in trauma, and therefore it's quite difficult for someone who is traumatized to be the person that's shaping the service. Does that make sense? Yeah. But they can tell us about the feedback and the impact it's had on them individually, but they're not necessarily going to stand on a soapbox and wave not anonymity and talk about it in any other way. So it's understanding if those voices, albeit if they're anonymous and just telling us the difference it's made to them, are good enough examples of people in the lead, because they won't necessarily be delivering the service to other people because they won't necessarily be strong enough to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you take that one.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, I worked on a women's project delivering a similar kind of thing that you're talking about, Mags, and it's difficult to get that their voice heard, isn't it? Because their voice, they don't have a voice at that point in their life, and you are the person who listens to everything that's going on for them. So it's fair to say that you are, in a way, they're shaping it by telling you. They might come and say, Mags, you know, I've been in a domestic violent relationship and I feel like I want to get at my own place. I want to do this and I want to do that. And you're helping them to shape what they want to see, that their life, they want to see that change. They're not quite sure how to do it, and you're supporting them to do it. But they're shaping it in a way. And whatever you're doing for them is being shaped by what they want. They just don't know it all at the time, do they? Because they're in a dark place and they can't get a clear mind. Once they've got that, they're able to tell you what they want. And as they get more confident, I want to volunteer, I want to do this, I want to do that, they are shaping it. And it's taking that information and keeping hold of that for when you come to apply to reach into communities. And it would be taken on its own merit, because we understand about domestic violence and crime and all those kind of things. It's very sensitive. And so we are empathetic towards that, definitely.
Okay. Thanks very much. I'm sorry we're out of time.